Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Podcraft. This is the show that helps you run a successful podcast. I'm Colin Gray from Alitu and the podcast host, and I'm joined by Matthew, as always. How are you getting on, Matthew?
Yeah, I mean, you say always, Colin. It's been a while since the two of us just had a wee chat together. On this, anyway. I mean, we do talk outside the podcast, believe it or not. But
Every now and again. Yeah, totally. We've been doing a lot of other kind of formats, haven't we? We've been doing our coaching episodes. We've been doing a few more interviews. So it's been good fun, actually. Have you enjoyed doing the interviews? Because it's not really usually our wheelhouse, is it?
no, I mean, it's been really good trying out the different formats. I think there's a lot of good stuff about mixing it up and a lot of things I enjoy. And I think that's the beauty of podcasting, isn't it? Like, you're never married to a format and you can always mix things up and try different things and then, return to what you were doing. But like, I just like being able to kind of mix it up now and then. And it's good, isn't it, to kind of keep your finger on the pulse of all the different formats and how they work. What's been your own sort of thoughts and takeaways?
Yeah, I do enjoy doing an interview. I never like the all the logistics around it. Like, this is the thing we often tell people, isn't it? Like, doing a solo show or a co-hosted show like we do more often, it's so much easier in terms of like booking stuff in. You don't have all the back and forth around dates, around questions, then the research ahead of time, particularly around that person, all that kind of stuff. Doing a solo show, obviously there still is planning and everything, but it's just a different world, isn't it? It's not the same as having to speak to a stranger and research their area and all the booking and everything around it, isn't it?
Aye, all the sort of logistical overheads. But yeah, I mean, the outcome is really good content, I like to think. And yeah, we've got a few more in the bank to publish, but obviously we're hoping to get behind the mic ourselves more regularly as well. We've got a busy couple of weeks coming up. But like, speaking of such, Colin, you've just been away. Where have you been the last few days? I haven't seen you around.
Yeah, I've had a couple of trips. September's been pretty crazy. So I was at Retain Live just recently. It's an event around membership sites. So how to run like a membership site, a community to monetize an audience more than anything else. And it was really interesting, actually. There was a lot of podcasters there. So really nice to talk to a range of people running podcasts that help them grow their membership sites. And yeah, I ran a workshop on the Monday, actually, as part of it. So I got in, about 10 people in total, split into a couple of groups, just talking about launching a podcast, and then a range of people actually who run a podcast pretty regularly. So yeah, it was good fun talking to them and actually just getting some of the kind of up-to-date questions about, what people are thinking about in the podcasting world these days. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of leads into what I wanted to ask you there. Like, you've been doing this sort of thing a long time. What, if any, are the differences now in the kind of common questions you get asked in 2025 versus, say, like 2013 or whatever?
Oh, there's the obvious ones, isn't there? We're going to put on the klaxon sound. We're going to mention AI. How do you use AI in your workflow? Like, how do you bring it in? Is it competition? Like, is there any point in making a podcast these days when there's people out there like churning out AI voiced podcasts throughout the world? So that's one part of it. There's video as the other. Like, how do you actually integrate video into your podcast? Is it actually worth integrating video? Do you full episodes versus short episodes? All of those kind of things. So there's the obvious ones like that. But do you know, the thing that's actually come up for me a lot recently has been people coming along, having done a podcast for a while, grown a decent audience, getting engagement, all of that stuff. But then really now the thing they're struggling with is how to turn listeners into buyers. So how to turn listeners into somebody that actually consumes their products. This is obviously coming from people who run a podcast for the purposes of like growing a business around it. So maybe it's the membership sites, you have some kind of a club related to your the topic you talk about in your podcast, and you want to try and encourage people to join that membership. Or maybe it's a software product like we have with Alitu. We run Podcraft partly for the reason for growing our products, which is, our academy for education and coaching, and Alitu as a product to help you make your podcast. So how do you include that in your podcasts and mention it naturally and encourage people to actually sign up for those things. So that was something that came up a lot recently, actually. Is that something you've heard a lot recently, Matthew? Do you think there's been an increase in that? People really thinking about that funnel from listener to customer?
Without a doubt, yeah. I mean, you've kind of covered like use cases and examples, even where, whether it is like I've already got a business and the podcast is kind of trying to lead in and market that business, or whether it is just monetizing a podcast. Maybe your business is, you're attempting to build that off the back of your podcast. And it's tough, isn't it? Like, I mean, finding listeners is tough enough, but like there are, ways to do it. But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to actually like getting somebody to pay you for something, that is really tough. There's no way around it, is there?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. What advice do you give people? I had a couple of things that I shared with them. I think it can be quite personal. Like, I think it can depend a lot on your topic, what you cover, what your product is, how you can tie it in. But I had a few examples. I'm happy to go over here. It'd be good to actually cover a couple of them. But like, what advice do you give people when somebody asks you that?
This is like a real weak spot for me, like anything to do with like sales or that. But I guess like my biggest kind of piece of advice, for what it's worth, is just consistency and clarity of messaging. Like,
Yeah.
just being really clear on actually what you're offering, probably just trying to offer one thing and just doing it really clearly and consistently. Again, it's definitely not an area that I feel very strong in, so I'm prepared to be
Yeah.
argued otherwise. But what's your own thoughts?
No, I think you're right. That's a huge part of it. It's just making it, really clear what you do quite often, as much as you can. But I think the couple of things that I mentioned to the folks I was talking to that came up, like just asking, like, what is it you sell? What kind of podcast do you run? Like, the two parts of it are like dynamic ads are definitely a nice way to go about it as a foundation. The ability to be able to insert, up to date, trending, good adverts for what you do into your content and into your back catalogue as well, and be able to update them as you go. So say like, make them quite contextual. I think this works quite nicely. So like, we've just had an update in Alitu. We've just released, video recording. So go over and check it out. Here's a couple of ways you can use it to improve your own podcast. And putting in something like that, into your podcast, right into the back catalogue, into your current episodes, but then updating that as you go and having that something new. Like if it's an academy, a membership site like we do, maybe it's a live event that's coming up. You're running something with, we're running this with Matthew McLean. He's going to come on and talk about sales, which is his expertise, coming up on whatever that date is. And being able to have that kind of up-to-date stuff can be quite nice. Dynamic ads, though, tend to be a little bit jarring, so they're not necessarily the best way to sell, are they, Matthew? But they can be a nice way to kind of include stuff like that with it, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I love dynamic ads, even like out with the realms of monetization. They come in really handy for me in my own shows. So yeah, I can see like a big benefit of using the dynamic ads. And I guess as well, like one of the benefits of selling your own stuff is like now it's getting very, I don't know if regulated's quite the right word, it probably is, but like if you're being sponsored by someone else's company, in the past, people could do a very good job at just naturally, casually mentioning that as part of the content, and it wasn't quite clear it was a sponsorship. And I know that's murky, but it worked really well for people. But now you've got to be very clear, we're sponsored by this company and whatever. But with your own products, like those rules, I wouldn't imagine apply. Like you could just talk about your own product. Like you're getting money from it, but that's through sales. So it's does that make sense?
Yeah. It does. That's like that was the big one. So that was the second part of it. So dynamic ads I see as kind of a foundation. But the second part is really how you figure out ways to include your products, your membership, your product, your whatever it is, your consulting, your coaching, naturally in the stuff you talk about. Just before we jump into that though, like what are you using it just as an example for your own shows, like the dynamic advertising? Like what are you using that for to include in stuff like, are you using it in your tabletop gaming show, for example? Like what do you do with it?
Yeah, so I use it to run a Patreon ad actually, which doesn't do very well, but it's in there. And I do a question of the month, a voice question of the month. So I've got a SpeakPipe link. So it means that each month I could update the question of the month like throughout
Mm.
all 150 odd episodes. So no matter what episode somebody's listening to, they'll get the latest question rather than the question from like 3 years ago. So that's
Yeah.
working really well for me.
That's really cool, actually. Yeah. So you just ask the question, get them to phone in, and that means that no matter what episode they're listening to, you're still getting like current content you can include in the next episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, but the big thing really that came out was around, so mentioning your stuff naturally. So, mm, like, I mean, I just did it really, didn't I? I mentioned Alitu a minute ago, but it's as part of the teaching. I mentioned the academy a minute ago, but it's part of the teaching. The key is really figuring out, like, how do you include the thing you're doing in a way that actually adds value. And I think one of the most common ways is just as I just did. It's like it's as an example. It's as a case study. It's as a, here's what you can do with dynamic ads, and here's how we do it to promote Alitu, our podcast maker product, and our academy, which is our coaching and education. And it means you get to mention your own products, but it's not an advert. It's actually using it as an example. It's using it as, something that people can actually get some. It's offering more value because that example illustrates it and makes it more clear to the listener. And I think another way of doing that is actually just to bring resources out of there too. So like something we do sometimes, Matthew, isn't it? That like if we're talking about a topic, we're going in depth on a topic. Like let's say we're doing a Podcraft episode on growth, maybe with collaborations. So we're talking about different ways to grow your podcast by collaborating with other podcasters. We might go into depth about like 2 or 3 different methods. We might go into like co-hosted episodes. We might go into like trailer swaps. We might go into, panel episodes. And we go into depth in them. And we actually say, like, this is actually taken a little bit from one of our lessons from the academy. Like, this is something we cover really in depth in here. I'm going to cover this whole thing. And you basically give away that lesson. But at the end, you say, by the way, we've got about 7 or 8 other tactics in our academy as well. If you want to go really in depth on this, definitely go and try these 3 we've just talked about on the episode. But you'll get a video on that. You'll get a checklist on all of these inside the academy. And you'll get about 7 other tactics too that you can go into. So you've given value, but you've also said, here's some little supplementary parts you can get that helps you put this into action. And equally, you can go and you get more, like there's more things to add to it from there. So you're mentioning stuff like, again, you're giving things away, but you're really mentioning the academy. You're showing how much value is in there by that. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, so for example, like we do the 4-minute feedback in the academy. So we might somebody could potentially submit their podcast to us publicly and we could play the first 4 minutes on Podcraft, and then you and I could give the podcaster their thoughts. But that's a Podcraft episode. But obviously the call to action then is, by the way, we do this for every academy member. This is a service.
Yeah.
So you would kind of, it's useful content, but you're also promoting like your own service or product.
Absolutely. It's something like that as well. Like you can even, that doesn't even need to be a call to action, just mentioning it on its own, like just saying, this is a question. By the way, we got a question this week in our Podcraft Academy. This is what it was. Here's a bit of feedback that we gave them. And you just go into that depth and you don't even say, go and join it. You do, but it's just so clear through through the question that came in and the answers we've given, how much value that person got by being a member, and it just really encourages them to go along. So yeah, that's a really good example. There was a mushroom lady I met at the event, Matthew. Can you guess what mushroom lady talks about?
No, actually. Was it like underwater knitting or whatever the old cliche was?
It was more than just mushrooms. Actually, she did a nature show, so it was really cool. She goes out in the forest, basically in her local area, and just talks about nature. She just picks something that she sees on her walk and actually like digs into it, talks it through, and just gives people that kind of nature experience. People who want to just learn more about like the things they see out and about, and in the forest and the hills and the fields, all that kind of stuff. And mushrooms was one kind of big part of what she enjoys about that experience and what she teaches. And it just, one of the things we talked through was like, she'll talk through a couple of common mushrooms. Like she'll talk through a description of them, what you can use them for, what you can cook with them, what kind of medicinal properties they have, that kind of stuff. She'll talk through maybe 2 or 3 common mushrooms and then talk through how to recognize them, and give some like, here's the signs you go for, here's the things that you're looking for to make sure it's this type of mushroom, that kind of thing. But that was really clear. Like she runs a membership on that exact thing. And inside that membership, she has those guides. She has visual guides as well. Like a sort of checklist. Here's what to look for. Exactly. Here's some photos to make sure you recognize it. But here's some recipes that you can cook with it. Here's some other uses that these have. And here's another 12 mushrooms as well that you can look for too. So that it was such a clear way to be able to mention it. The fact that you can say, right, I'm going to bring, there's like 2 or 3 mushrooms that some of my members were asking about last week. So I directed them towards this course. So I thought about it, I'd talk about it here as well. And by the way, if you want to get those visual guides, just go over and join up. It's over at this place here. So it was like really clear, kind of a really clear pathway to create some content that is based on something you do in your membership. You're still given tons of value, but then there's a really clear call to action at the end. Like, go and join if you actually want more of this. So yeah, I think that's a huge part of it. Is if you can figure out how to talk about the content that you have in your membership more naturally, give away a lot of it. This is the kind of the scary part, isn't it, Matthew? Like you're giving away a fair bit of it, but in reality, people aren't actually paying for the information in a membership. They're paying for the resources that help them actually put it into action. Your coaching, your feedback that helps personalize that to their context. And then the other people in there that are, giving them conversations around it, motivation, inspiration, all of that kind of stuff. Plus anything else you can make unique in there that isn't just pure information. So yeah, I think that's a huge part of it.
Did I ever tell you about the mushroom walk I went on a few years ago? And
I don't think so.
Maybe the same lady, but she was like, this one here is like really good in soup. And then this one over here, this is called the Angel of Death, and people used to like kill kings and that with it. She was like, the way you could tell the difference is like there's a slight brownish hue on the rim here. So I was like, I'm having steak for tea. It's fine by me. So not having the Angel of Death.
Not taking that chance. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. But yeah, I hope that was useful if you're out there listening, something around being able to convert your listeners. What's the other thing we were going to update on, Matthew, was our, we met up, didn't we, recently, talking of mushrooms. We saw a few on our walk. We met up for a wee planning walk, which was really nice. Even that itself, I think, was a great tip, wasn't it, Matthew? Like, did you get a lot out of actually, rather than us doing just an online call for planning and not even just meeting up in person and sitting at a table for 2 or 3 hours. We kind of met up, we had a bit of a pre-planning thing, and then we just went out for a walk and had a talk through it. Did you find that was pretty useful in the end?
Yeah, it's so much better, isn't it? Like, I reckon with like a remote call, like if we're doing a planning meeting, I've got about an hour, and then any time over the hour, I'm just like, I'm starting to flag a wee bit. And then, meeting up is the step above that. And, sitting in a cafe is great. You could do a good couple hours there. But see, when you actually like go out for a walk and, you've got your agenda. And I think we got quite a good system on the go where we had our lav mics. So we were able to record and transcribe everything. So nothing got like lost. And it's just so much better. Like there's probably lots of obvious reasons for that. But like, what did you kind of make of it?
Yeah, same, totally. I think there's something different about being active while you're thinking. It just keeps you keeps the energy up, keeps your brain working well, keeps, those endorphins going. We're getting a view as we're going along. It felt like there's almost a weird thing as well about, I think we've known each other long enough and comfortable enough that you can sit in silence and think for 5 minutes anyway. But like, when you're out walking, it was definitely more contemplation time. Like you felt like you could kind of walk for a few minutes and just look at the view while you're thinking about the thing we were just talking about, and then kind of come up with more ideas too. Like it's just more thinking space as well somehow. But yeah, I thought that was great. And we recorded a couple of things, didn't we? We didn't end up recording an episode. That was part of the plan, but I think we totally could have if we wanted to. So that's possible too. But yeah, just the plan in itself, I thought that was really good. So yeah, if you're out there listening, like you're thinking about meeting up with a co-host or just actually, even solo, like going for a walk for an hour, 2 hours and actually just recording some thoughts, having a mic with you to record some things. I think this is one of the things I'm finding most useful about AI at the moment as well, the ability to record a monologue, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes of thoughts, and for it to help you organize it afterwards. You don't have to read back through the transcript. It can actually help you organize, bring out the key points, and then review it and then take some action on that as well. So like we did that with ours, didn't we? Recorded for like an hour and a half and then brought it back, and it pulled out some great points and tasks and all that stuff, didn't it?
I know, yeah, that sort of stuff makes this so much easier. And yeah, on the episodes front too, it's something I'm doing more and more as well. Like, again, harking back to my question of the month episodes, I like to do a little intro and update, like from my own end. And I'm finding myself more and more, I've no motivation just to fire up Audition and get my mic out and stand at my desk and talk. So I just take the lav mics, go for my walk. I don't start straight away, but I'll maybe walk for like half an hour out the way, and then on the loop back round to the office or the house, wherever I am, I'll just pin the lav mic on, and I've probably given myself room to think about what I'm going to say, and then I find I'm pretty fluid, or as fluid as I could be. But I just like it a lot better. And then coincidentally as well, next week on Podcraft, we're going to have a brilliant interview that I recorded yesterday with Neil from the Photo Walk podcast. So he just celebrated his 500th episode, and it was such an enjoyable conversation. And a lot of what he's doing is outdoors. It is literally the photo walk. He goes out, he's just holding an iPhone up, like he's not even using a lav mic, and the audio is really good. And I listened to a couple of his episodes, and it's just, you're there with him, like it's got that real like theatre of the mind, and obviously the content has to be good in that as well, which it is. But I think, especially if you're doing an audio podcast, like leaning into something like this more and more is going to provide a lot of value for you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, but I suppose that, I think that's a good learning in itself. But the main point was actually around a big part of the content strategy. Like the reason we met up was to really think through the next 6 months or a year of our content, wasn't it? Like, what are we going to do next? What are we going to change? What are we going to keep the same? What are we going to do more of, less of, all that stuff. And a big part of what our kind of outcomes were that might be the most interesting to you, if you're out there listening, is how we actually better integrate our podcast content with video. And obviously this is something that's on a lot of people's minds just now. You don't need to do video at all, but because we have a team, because we have resource, because we have the good gear, studio, all that kind of stuff, we have an opportunity to create great video. And so it's figuring out how to do that well, because it's not been just long form video, like fully transferred. So taking a full video episode and like an interview, just a head-to-head like we have just now, Matthew, and posting that whole thing on YouTube, that stuff just isn't really working that well. It is for some, there's always outliers, but for the vast majority of people, that kind of episode isn't really performing very well on YouTube. So it was more thinking about how we can turn our podcast content into good video for YouTube, with the prime goal really being more discoverability, more visibility, people to find our episodes or segments of our episodes there, but still lead them back to the audio, isn't it? Because we want, our core is still to get them back to the audio podcast, because we think that's where the true engagement happens, where the true fandom happens, where people really listen in and become, trustworthy. Like, you trust your show, trust your content, trust the people, and actually end up using the products we do in the background, or not, just get some value from the show itself. Maybe that's fine. So that was a big part of it, wasn't it, Matthew, that we were talking through?
Yeah, I definitely, and interestingly, and kind of on topic, like I seen a piece last week, I think it was. I'm sure it was Ashley Carman was writing about how, and again, I know there's nuance to this, but she was saying that doing shorts can potentially hamper people's downloads or views or whatever else they're doing, because the audience are feeling that they're going to get, like, anything that was worth saying in the episode, they could just get it on the shorts, because it'll inevitably become a short. So they therefore don't need to. And I think the primary creator pool here she was maybe talking about were streamers, where I guess, like live streams, I don't want to throw everyone under the same bus, but with live streams there's probably a bit more filler than even just a podcast episode. I don't know, I could be wrong, but there was that angle to it, that like, if you're putting all your value out there in shorts, is there any incentive to then consume the long form piece. And again, I know there's more nuance to it, and I know there's more to shorts than simply getting them back to their episode. Or is there? Like, that's the other side. I'm not entirely decided on this. I don't really have a position, but any thoughts on that yourself?
What, on whether just viewing the short itself on its own is good enough, or whether, like, what the point is in getting them back to the audio episode? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like, I mean, do you think that is a valid point? That, like, well, if I take the value and, you know, squeeze it and put it into shorts, is there then any incentive for people to come back and listen to me for an hour?
Well, only if you tell them that there is, and there actually is. As in, yeah, if you have an hour-long episode that can be distilled into 60 seconds, and that actually doesn't really, that's it, then there's probably something wrong with the episode itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think the way I'm thinking about it just now, so there's two parts to it, I think. One is how to do shorts well. And I think the old auto clipping thing, where the purpose of an auto clipping tool is to find a really great standalone 60 seconds, really. And I think sometimes they talk about the idea that it is a tease for the larger episode. But yeah, Ashley's point was that it's not really, is it? It's finding, like, the point, the goal of the tool is to find something that's a great 60-second standalone thing that you get a bit of insight and you can just move on and you get nothing else. Which, yeah, absolutely. That could be a good point. I'm not sure. I haven't quite decided on that myself, to be honest, but I think there's logic there. You get that, you move on, whatever. I think the shorts that I'm seeing work well and actually much more effective are when we record this, but then actually afterwards, I say, right, okay, I want to record something around the idea of, let's go back to the previous one, like how you sell from a podcast episode. I want to record a 60-second clip about how you include your product naturally in your content. But I'm going to actually design it a little bit more effectively. I'm going to think, right, what's a good first sentence that raises a bit of curiosity around this, makes people stop, makes people listen to it? Then what's a great one point that I can make from this? Here's something, of value for them for 30 seconds. But then at the end, say, we also talked about this, this, and this. Or we also gave away this, this, and this framework, whatever it is. Go and listen to the full episode for that. And it's, in that sense, it's like it is offering a tip. It is offering value. So the thing itself does give you something. But it's really, really clear why you should go and listen to the big episode. Because you mention it, you make it a call to action. You don't get that with auto clips, because auto clips are just taking someone from the middle of the episode. Whereas if you go and create something dedicated, and this has only taken me like 10 or 15 minutes to do, because I just pull out my phone, I just think for a minute or two about a good first line. I think for a minute or two about the segment I want to include. I think for a minute or two about the call to action I want to include. And it really doesn't take long because I've just recorded. I've just done this thing. We've just talked on Podcraft about it. So that's kind of more how I'm thinking about it. And it feels to me like it takes less time than the auto clipping tools, because I'm sure you've used them too, Matthew, but they just they always need a bit of work, don't they? If you try them anyway, you need to do a bit of editing, a bit of tweaking in any case. So it's not like they're completely automated, are they?
No, that's it. I think the approach you're doing there is spot on, because the amount of times, like, I've maybe taken the guest track, they've made a really good point, but it doesn't seem to clip very well because it's part of a conversation. It's not supposed to clip. Yeah. And I'm not saying it can't be done, but you almost want to, like, get back in touch with the person and say, like, see what you said there, go and say it again, but say it in a self-contained way, because, like, it obviously sounds like you're gearing up for me to respond. And so I think the way you're doing it there it seems like the best way, in my opinion.
Yeah. I hope so. Well, it's one good way, I think. Yeah, one more effective way potentially. And the other way I'm thinking about it, though, this is what kind of ties into the type of episode we're doing just now, Matthew. And I think this is one thing we talked about on our walk, which I'd love to try more of, is this kind of variety episode style, but more conversational, and breaking it down into, 5 to 10 minute segments. I think this kind of thing can work quite nicely for podcasts as well, where you actually make the effort to just introduce a bit more structure to an episode and make it a bit more standalone. I've talked about this years back, actually, around like teaching lessons. Like, it kind of goes back to teaching science. Like, how do you actually teach something effectively? And usually to teach someone effectively, you do actually break a lesson down into 3, 4, 5 sections that all are relatively standalone. You might have the summary section, which should give the start to end. It should give, like, here's the whole topic in 2 or 3 minutes. And that gives you a kind of scaffold to place everyone else on. Then maybe you've got the theory where you do actually dig into it in detail over 10, 15, 20 minutes. Then you've maybe got some case studies and examples. And those should stand on their own. You should be able to tell those stories on their own, and they give a bit of teaching by themselves. And then maybe some homework as well. So, structure like that. So you can do a whole episode like that, but you can break it up into those 4 parts. And each of those 4 parts could be a YouTube video on their own, but they'd all link to each other. So if you find the case studies and the examples, here's some examples of how we've seen people, here's some examples of how we've seen people sell product from a podcast. And we say, if you want to hear some more theory around how this works really well, how to design your own, go and watch this theory video. If you're actually just looking for a 3-minute summary, a 3-minute highlight reel on this, go and watch that if you're short of time, and it'll give you at least a little bit of it. Or if you want the homework, go and watch this other video. Here's some tasks you can take to actually include, sales and product in your podcast episodes. So I think that could be really good. And one thing I want to try is something like we bring like 1 or 2 topics each to an episode, probably more like 2 or 3 actually. So say we bring 2 or 3 topics to an episode, kind of like we're doing here, but more something that we'll kind of pose to the other, a question, a suggestion, a tool we're playing with, and have a conversation back and forth. And that then becomes a 4 or 5 minute segment, maybe even up to 10 minutes. And then that can be clipped on its own as a longer form YouTube video that is still kind of a suggestion, a tease for the larger thing. We say at the end, we include a call to action saying, this was one segment from our recent episode where we also talked about this tip and this tool and that framework, and go and listen to the whole thing for the stories, the examples, and the whole thing. And I think that kind of content might be a great way to create something which is podcast and long form and worthwhile going and listening to the whole thing. But equally, it does create worthwhile shorter clips as well. Not short clips, not the 60-second shorts, but good quality, like 5 to 10 minute shorter form YouTube video that is worth publishing. I don't know. What do you think?
No, pretty much agree with what you're saying. Like it is a good, sensible strategy. So yeah, I'd nothing to add. That would just be me waffling.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. So I think I'd like to try that for a few episodes in the future and see how we go with that, repurposing those. But we can even try this one. This has been more kind of conversational, updatey, but yeah, maybe it's worthwhile. What else do you want to cover, Matthew? We've got a couple of updates on content and stuff. Worth digging into some of them.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a couple of new pieces that we'd published because I think the listener will be super interested in them. The first was just published yesterday. Katie posed the question, are algorithms good for podcasting? So this is one that, based on some chats I had back in London in May, I knew this divided opinion and we thought it'd be a really good question to ask in the polls that she runs in the Perspectives newsletter. So she'd asked that question, should podcast platforms use algorithms to recommend shows the way YouTube does with videos? So 37%, including me, said no, and 63% said yes. So I was outvoted on that front, and obviously there's, again, nuances, the word of the day. There's nuance to this, and people, she's got a lot of feedback in here from comments that folks left, making really good points, and you could definitely see the arguments for algorithms and how they could potentially improve discoverability. And then we've got a few comments about, why we might be suspicious of algorithms or wary of them. And then some key takeaways for the listener to go and do something with it as well, or the reader as it is. So
cool. Nice. What about this one here? This one's intriguing me. Should you include a photo in your cover art? That's a whole article she wrote, isn't it? What was the kind of, what were a couple of the teaser takeaways from that?
Yeah, so that started with, she wrote a wee while back about a study that came out, and it was a company in Holland, I think it was, the Netherlands, who'd said, like, we have analysed every podcast cover art or whatever it was, and we've come up with the perfect formula. And they said, and you must have a photo of yourself on it. So Katie had asked the question in the poll of the newsletter. So she asked, do you include a picture of yourself on your podcast cover art? 71% of folks said no, 29% said yes. So Katie used the comments here, the feedback from people, and just basically went through why a photo might be a good idea. Certain podcasts that it does work very well for your kind of personal brand or your coach style podcasts. But there's also a lot of shows and topics where it's probably not a good idea. I mean, a very obvious one is like audio drama. When you see a true crime podcast, there maybe is a person's photo on it, but it's more often than not a person who's the subject matter rather than the host. So there is like again, I'm going to say it again, nuance to this. So, but really good piece from Katie and really interesting to see that data as well.
Yeah, yeah. What about, all right, this is a good example for the selling product. This is a free one, actually, so it's not really that relevant. But you could say this is one that could be a course. It's called 15 Editing Tips from 15 Years. So, I mean, that could easily be a course and a membership or something and be able to, so you could mention like 2 tips and then say for the other 13, go and check it out.
Yeah.
So, what's 1 or 2 tips from that one you've got?
Yeah, disappointingly for the listener, this was written by me, so it's not going to be as good as Katie's stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've been doing this a long time. I've made a lot of mistakes, so I thought it would be a nice idea to distill that into a post which we've put together. Again, all of these will be in the show notes. So one of them that might be surprising, because we've talked about this a lot recently, about how you could record the worst possible source material and just make it sound good. Like there's so many good cleanup tools now that you almost don't have to pay attention to it. So one of my editing tips is kind of pre-editing, but in the planning stages, is I'm saying that great recordings still matter even in 2025, because it's my opinion that if you start to overlook or skimp on your setup and you start to get sloppy about things, that's going to bleed over into other aspects of your podcast. So I think if you don't take your audio seriously when you record it, I think that's a slippery slope. So that was one of my tips, is just, don't rely on these great cleanup tools which can bail us out. But again, we want to be professional about this if we're serious about growing an audience.
Yeah, I think there's something around as well, the fact that even if it can clean us up so well, it still does alter your voice, doesn't it? Like the kind of natural, untreated voice with a wee bit of background noise, a wee bit of atmosphere. You're talking about that feeling of, what was the show earlier on you were talking about? Like somebody was out and about and you can hear the atmosphere and all that. And the Mushroom Lady as well, I was talking about like being able to hear the forest and all that kind of stuff in the background. Like those kind of shows, they take you into the world, don't you? Whereas if you're taking everything out and it's just like over processed, the voice almost sounds, I mean, maybe that's another way we stand out from, AI podcasting in future, is that's a signal. This is a real human, because there's a little bit of noise, a bit of mistakes, a bit of that kind of stuff in the background.
Yeah, I mean, that leads perfectly into the next tip I was going to give, which was tip number 9, background noise could be a blessing, not a curse. So again, leading just off the back of what you're saying there, I gave the example of I was at an event in August, and again recording with the old lavalier mics, and it was like a nice courtyard, bustling environment. There was games going on, and I was just walking around having conversations, and I could have taken that back, put it through Alitu, and basically made it sound like we were in a really silent studio. Like I could have done that, but I chose not to, because like it just added so much more, the environment. And so like I think it's good to have this choice. Like I'm either going to clean this up or not, because sometimes what you leave in is going to add to the listening experience.
Yeah, perfect. Cool. Okay, plenty there. There's another couple as well. We've got Microspeak. What the heck is a Microspeak Plus?
Oh, so this is a digital recorder. It's a really, really like novel looking wee thing. It's like bright yellow. So it's got a couple of big clear buttons. So it's a digital recorder. If you think about like a Zoom recorder or that. The old H2N, it's like, it looks a wee bit similar, like in shape to that. But this seems to have been designed predominantly for like visually impaired folks, because it's really clear and the big buttons, and you get like voice prompts as well. So I was really interested to take a look at this, and my daughter, she ended up playing with it quite a lot and recording her voice, and she was able to work it like straight away, and she's 4. So that's a good sign for it being a pretty accessible bit of kit. And as much as like, it's not like a Zoom or a Tascam where it's recording pretty high fidelity WAV files. Like this is recording kind of compressed MP3 files, but I honestly thought the audio was really good on it. So I did a review because I know a lot of folks like they're maybe looking for something a bit more accessible or maybe not techie at all, and it's a pretty cheap bit of gear as well. I think you're like 50 quid for one. So the Microspeed Plus, I've got a review and a wee video and a sound sample and that, so I'll put a link to that in the show notes too.
Perfect. Yeah, links to all of these in the show notes. And that includes an update to our full digital recorder roundup as well, actually. So we've got all the good digital recorders out there. If you're a kind of podcaster that records out and about or benefits from using an actual proper digital recorder, you'll find them all in there. And the final one we've got here, I wonder, we leave this as an actual tease, like don't give anything away about this, but it's the truth about audio-only podcasts in 2025, isn't it, Matthew? That's going to be a good tease.
Yeah, I would recommend clicking the link for this. Yeah, I'll not give anything away, but again, another really good piece from Katie looking at some real world data out there, which might surprise the listener. So be sure to check out the show notes and get a wee look at that.
Great stuff, yeah. And talking about products, talking about products. If you want to support the show, we do really appreciate you checking out what we do. That includes our academy, our Podcraft Academy, where we offer a whole ton of coaching, expert interventions, I'm starting to call them, because it's things like our title clinic, our 4-minute feedback, our content boss, loads of ways that aren't information. It's to help you actually take action. We have courses, we have resources, we have templates, we have all of that stuff you need. But the big thing is really we help you take action on your podcast and make it a success, help it grow, help it monetize, help it turn into that business of your dreams or grow that business you already have. And then we have Alitu. So Alitu is our podcast maker app, which is the other side of it. We've got the knowledge to do a good podcast in the academy, and we've got the tools to actually make it easy in Alitu. It includes call recording, it includes audio editing, audio cleanup, like Matthew said, can take all of that background noise out if you want it to. And then we've got audio publishing as well. So publishing your podcast to the web. So yeah, that's over at alitu.com, alitu.com. And the academy is thepodcasthost.com/academy. But as usual, there'll be links in your show notes. Just open up that show notes or descriptions space and you'll see them right there. All right, Matthew, it's been good to catch up, just the two of us.
It has indeed, like a romantic meal.
Indeed. Cool. All right. Thank you out there for listening as well. We'll talk to you next time.